I'm speaking today with Michelle Bamberger and Robert Oswald at their home. One of the things you may not realize about them from their paper is that they have one disclosure which you have to make, which is that they're both married. And they both bring a different skill set to the area of discussing and investigating the health effects of hydraulic fracturing. Perhaps I should ask you both in turn what particular in your background brings you to this area in terms of skills.
Okay, I'm Michelle Bamberger. I'm a veterinarian in private practice in New York, and I became involved in this originally because I started hearing about animals becoming ill and wondering how they were being affected by this process, if at all. And I felt that documentation really needed to be done to see if there was some sort of connection or link between their health changes and the presence of hydraulic fracturing nearby.
And you, Robert?
Okay, I'm a faculty at the Cornell College of Veterinary Medicine. I've been interested in central nervous system function and toxins and drugs that interact with neurons. So this is actually very interesting in terms of toxicological profile of some of these drugs and its interaction with both the nervous system and the endocrine system.
So one of the things that you've been doing is essentially a descriptive epidemiology of the health effects, but you've been using animals as sentinels for these health effects. Could you describe to me why animals make a good sentinel to warn us about the health effects of hydraulic fracturing?
Yeah, the one thing that I usually like to point out is that you can get, even in a descriptive study, you can get your numbers a bit higher. One example that we use often is that it's hard to find 100 pregnant women in the vicinity of one gas well, whereas we can do that in veterinary medicine. We can get 100 pregnant cows in the vicinity of one well. So in terms of just the sheer numbers, we can look at that. They're also exposed continuously. They don't go off to work during the day. They're in the area. They're outside. They don't really have any choice about what water they drink. They drink the water that's available to them. So, and their reproductive rates are higher. It's just, it seems that you can see the problems in animals sometimes sooner than you may in humans.
And as a veterinarian coming to this particular area, is there anything that strikes you about the cases that you've seen?
Yes, with both production animals as well as small animals, the big effect that we've seen with numbers affected is in reproduction. So seeing a lot of abortions and stillbirths that for the farmers are unusual. Their rates of these things before drilling started in their area are in the range of 1 to 5% usually. We look at after drilling, what they're seeing is they're up 10 to as much as 50% in some cases. So abortion, stillbirths, failure to breed, and failure to cycle. Again, we don't know definitively what is causing this, but we do know it's happening. We do have that link. So much more investigation needs to be done. And just would like to say, as far as sentinels go, if we move from animals to people, that we have seen when we look at families that children are the ones to get sick first, and we feel that is because of their higher metabolic rates. Their exposure rates are higher for the reason of their metabolism, but also because they eat more per pound of body weight compared to adults. So they're going to be more exposed to whatever is in the environment.
So when you are visiting farms or animal owners, you're hearing stories both about the livestock or the domestic animals, and also humans too.
Right, we do. We started off with just animals, but quickly realized that the owners were also being affected in many different ways. But the major things that we've come upon with people are headaches. Headaches are often reported, nosebleeds, rashes, gastrointestinal symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea, and cramping. Those things are really common.
Now, there's a distinction here. Those symptoms that you're describing are things which are more instant after exposure, whereas reproductive changes take a longer period of time.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts that these may be done by different mechanisms?
That's a great question because approximately 40% or so of the chemicals that are known to be used in drilling and fracturing could potentially be endocrine disruptors.
Mm-hmm.
That throws us off a little bit because endocrine disruptors, of course, affect many different systems of the body. So that they could be in play as well. And I just want to add that as far as people and reproduction, because we're up over 35 cases now, we have several cases where we're starting to see some unusual reproductive things. In other words, in several cases there are young girls who are not cycling. So in the family history and what they're reporting, this is an unusual thing that's happening.
Do you find as a veterinarian it's different to talk to people?
Well, I know, because as a veterinarian we're really talking with people most of the times. Of course, the animals aren't talking to us per se except for their behavior, but we have to know how to deal with clients and talk with people. And what's unusual now for me is that I'm asking the people too what their problems are, but they feel very comfortable in telling me these things because they've already told me about what's happening with their animals. They feel very comfortable confiding their physical symptoms as well.
So, Robert, what do you think are the barriers that we have to understanding what are the particular toxins that are involved and the pathways by which they might be affecting people in this industry?
I mean, there are a lot of different issues. One, we don't know all of the routes of exposure. There hasn't been adequate testing. Even when there is testing, we really don't understand the levels of various chemicals that are important in terms of toxicology. We know now a lot about dose-response curves that are non-monotonic. That the low-dose effects could be as important or more important than high-dose effects. So and furthermore, we know almost nothing about combinations of toxicants in the environment and how they affect the body. So I think it's just really lack of information, basic information in toxicology in this, with respect to the chemicals that are being used.
So we have the chemicals that are being used in the fracking operation, both in terms of the drilling muds and also in terms of the slick water, which is used in the hydraulic fracturing itself. And then we have the flow back and the produced waters, which are both a mixture of what's gone down, but also whatever has been leached out down underground, a mile underground.
That's right.
So in the absence of knowledge as to what those chemicals are, can we still do research on the health effects of these agents?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in any health outbreak, one of the most important things to do is serious epidemiology, and that's has been done to some extent, but not really very extensively on this issue. And I think one can do that, and we can get a better idea of where to look once we know that. I think case studies are important for getting some ideas of what to look at. Case studies have a important role in the history of medicine for almost any disease outbreak or whatever. But epidemiology is also very important. I think once we know a little bit more about the prevalence of problems, we can then delve into more specific issues in a more informed way.
So you're visiting these people down in Pennsylvania predominantly at the moment. Are there any things that they can do for themselves in order to prevent these health effects?
One of the things we tell them is to try to stop using your water, and that can be really hard. Buying water is expensive. Not taking showers at home, unfortunately, is another recommendation if they don't have access to a water buffalo. But that's all going to decrease their exposure. Some people have moved out. The air is so bad, they find that they're much sicker living at home. They have burning of the eyes, nose, and throat, and all many other symptoms that we talked about. So we do recommend that. I always tell them to get their animals off the water. They can oftentimes do that with their companion animals, but getting a herd of cows off or your horses off is very difficult because of how much water those animals really need to stay healthy. So we do the basics that we can with decreasing exposure, but it becomes very, very difficult if people want to stay on their property and continue living in their home.
Both veterinary medicine and the kind of science that you're doing at Cornell requires a particular approach to those disciplines. In what way is your background as an evidence-based professional and as a scientist helpful in what you're doing at the moment in terms of investigating this problem?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, one of the things that we always try to do is look at any statement we make and make sure it's backed up by some evidence. Of course, it's orders of magnitude different from experimental science in the laboratory, where you can hold hold everything constant and change one variable and make some more definitive conclusions. So what we like to look for are cases where we can have experimental and control groups and do something that's a little bit more similar to experimental science. And one way to get at that perhaps is looking at herds that are split into two pastures, one pasture that has had some exposure and one that hasn't. And so, that's not a perfect experiment, but we're moving toward experimental science, away from just observation, and we can do that sort of thing.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.